The world had shrunk to this sterile, quiet room at 3 in the morning. The only sounds were the soft, rhythmic beeps of machines and the hushed hum of the neonatal intensive care unit that surrounded us. My name is Eleanor Vance, but my friends call me Ellie. I'm 33 years old, a high school history teacher in Denver, Colorado, and for my entire life, I've been the daughter my stepmother never wanted. My son, Leo, had entered the world far too early, born at just 27 weeks and weighing a fragile 2.5 pounds. He was now clinging to life inside an incubator, his tiny chest rising and falling beneath a complex web of wires and tubes. His heart was a tiny, fierce drum, fighting a battle I could only watch. I felt myself crumbling, trying to hold on to a strength I wasn't sure I possessed. With trembling fingers, I opened our family's group chat. I typed the words that felt like a scream trapped in my throat. "Leo is in the NICU. It's not looking good, please." I sent the message into the digital void, my thumb hovering over the screen, desperately waiting for a word of comfort from my dad, my sister, anyone. The response came, but it wasn't what I needed. It was from my stepmother, Meredith, the matriarch who held the reins of our family's hospitality empire with a perfectly manicured iron fist. From a luxury mountain resort in Aspen, she sent a single, polished heart emoji. A heart. That was the sum of her compassion while my entire world was collapsing around me. I stared at my phone, the screen's glow harsh in the dim light. In that moment, the silence of the room felt louder and more deafening than all of Leo's monitors combined. She had never liked me. I was the living reminder of my father's first marriage, a ghost at her perfectly set table, a permanent flaw in her narrative of a flawless family. That emoji wasn't a gesture of love or support. It was a cold, calculated message, a digital pat on the head to remind me to stay in my place, to remain small and invisible. I clutched the tiny knitted hat the nurses had given Leo, pressing it to my chest as a wave of betrayal tightened its grip around my lungs. They weren't coming. Not my dad, who always deferred to her. Not my sister, who was molded in her image. No one. A dark, chilling realization began to creep over me. I wasn't just alone in this. I was being actively erased. Have you ever been in the middle of a crisis, your heart laid bare, only to be met with a cold shoulder from the very people who are supposed to be your rock? Tell me your story in the comments. What happened when your family simply wasn't there? I didn't understand it fully then, but that single heart emoji wasn't the end of her cruelty. It was just the opening move in her calculated game to destroy me. 2 full days passed after that text message, and my phone remained a silent, dark rectangle. No missed calls, no follow-up texts, no visits. I stood beside Leo's incubator in the Denver NICU, my life suspended, watching the nurses with a kind of detached awe as they moved with practiced calm, adjusting his oxygen tubes with steady, gentle hands. My family's business, Vance Hospitality, was a major player in Denver's elite circles, a name synonymous with luxury hotels and exclusive developments that catered to the city's wealthy transplants. My stepmother, Meredith, was the architect of it all. She ran the company with absolute control, her public image as pristine as the 5-star lobbies of her hotels. She had always viewed me as a blemish on that carefully curated image. Eleanor Vance, the humble history teacher, the daughter from Richard's first life. To her, my decision to pursue a career in education instead of joining the family business was the final confirmation of my otherness. I was a disappointment, but more than that, I was a loose thread she couldn't control, a potential threat to the empire she had built. Throughout my childhood and into my adult life, Meredith had been an expert at making me feel like an outsider. She would lavish praise on my younger sister, Claire, her own daughter with my dad. At 29, Claire was a sharp, ambitious lawyer for the company, the golden child who would seamlessly fit into the mold Meredith created for her. "Just look at your sister," Meredith would say at family dinners, her voice dripping with a disdain so potent it felt like a physical thing. "Claire knows how to play the game. My father, Richard, who had once been a hands-on developer with a passion for building, had long ago ceded control of both the business and the family to her. He would just sit there and nod, too exhausted or too defeated to put up a fight. The only person in my life Meredith didn't openly deride was my husband, Mark. As a talented software engineer, his career was respectable enough to be left alone. But more importantly, his job provided the robust health insurance that was now the only thing keeping Leo's astronomical medical bills at bay. But that same job meant Mark was buried in overtime, working grueling hours to ensure that coverage remained secure. He was fighting for us in his own way, which left me to face the fluorescent-lit loneliness of the NICU by myself. I filled the endless hours by becoming an expert on the machinery that was keeping my son alive. I learned to interpret the symphony of beeps, memorizing the distinct tones that signaled a dip in Leo's heart rate or a drop in his oxygen saturation. A kind nurse named Jenna showed me how to change his impossibly small diaper through the portholes of the incubator, a delicate operation that felt like trying to defuse a bomb. Mark would rush in after his long shifts, his face etched with exhaustion, and whisper, "We'll get through this, Ellie." But his visits were always too short, and while the nurses were my saints, their professional kindness couldn't fill the gaping hole left by my family. I kept checking my phone, a masochistic ritual, waiting for my dad or Claire to just show up, to ask a single question about Leo. The silence was absolute. Then I learned from Jenna that Meredith had, in fact, called the hospital. She'd inquired about Leo's condition, a fact that sent a confusing flutter of hope through me, but it was immediately crushed by what Jenna told me next. Meredith had added that I was far too fragile to handle any visitors. That word, fragile, ignited a spark of pure rage inside me. Meredith wasn't just ignoring me. She was actively constructing a wall around me, spreading lies to keep my own father and sister away. It was a tactic I'd seen before. She was a master of twisting narratives, of painting me as unstable. She dismissed my teenage grief after my mother died as hysteria to my dad. Now, with my son's life hanging by a thread, she was using the same playbook, ensuring I was completely isolated. This wasn't neglect. It was a strategy. I tried calling Claire, desperately hoping my sister would see through Meredith's manipulations. The phone rang and rang until it went to voicemail. My dad's did the same. I didn't even bother trying to call Meredith. Her silence was already a declaration. My friend Jenna, who was a nurse in a different ward, became my lifeline, my anchor in the storm. During her breaks, she'd come find me in the NICU family lounge and sit with me, her quiet presence a balm. "You are so much stronger than they give you credit for," she said, pressing a bottle of water into my hand. Meredith's downtown Denver office was barely a 15-minute drive from the hospital, but it felt like it was on another planet. Her empire was built on the illusion of perfection, and my messy, terrifying reality was an imperfection she was determined to crop out of the picture. I held Leo's tiny foot in my hand, his skin unimaginably soft, and whispered a promise to him and to myself. I would fight for both of us. By the end of that first long week, I was scrolling blankly through my phone during a break, trying to distract myself from the constant anxiety. That's when I saw it. Meredith had posted a photo on Instagram. It was from a lavish launch party at their newest flagship hotel in Aspen. In the picture, she and my sister, Claire, stood shoulder to shoulder, both dressed in impeccable tailored power suits, clinking champagne glasses with some client. The caption read, "Celebrating the landmark Aspen grand opening, a new era for Vance hospitality." Their smiles were dazzling, carefree, and utterly oblivious. It was as if my son's fight for his life, happening just a couple of hours down the highway, was nothing more than irrelevant background noise. My chest seized, the air sucked out of my lungs as I stared at the screen. The glittering celebration on my phone was a cruel mockery of the sterile, grief-stricken world I was trapped in. My hand trembled, and I had a wild, furious impulse to call them, to scream into the phone and ask how they could possibly be toasting their success while my world was being torn apart at the seams. But I didn't. Instead, I swiped away the image. But it was too late. It was already seared into my memory. As I sat back down beside Leo's incubator, the full, crushing weight of their betrayal settled over me. Meredith had always kept me at a distance, the inconvenient child from a past she'd rather forget. But this wasn't just keeping me at arm's length. This was a public declaration. This party, this post, it was her way of presenting her picture-perfect family to the world, a family that pointedly did not include me. And Claire, my own sister, was right there beside her, her smiling face a portrait of complicity. Her laughter, which I could almost hear through the photo, felt like shards of glass in my gut. I opened our family group chat again, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I typed, "Leo is still in critical condition. Does anyone even care?" My thumb trembled over the send button. Then, with a surge of defiant pride, I deleted it all. They didn't deserve to see my pain. They hadn't earned the right to witness how deeply they had wounded me. Jenna found me a few minutes later, her nurse's badge catching the cold, fluorescent light as she walked into the lounge. "What's wrong?" she asked, her gaze immediately reading the devastation on my face. I couldn't speak, so I just handed her my phone. She looked at the picture and her expression hardened. She frowned and shook her head slowly. "Ellie, this isn't just cruel," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Meredith is controlling the narrative. She's deliberately cutting you out." Jenna then told me about her own stepfather, how he had systematically isolated her mother from her relatives during a major health crisis, convincing everyone that she needed her rest, when really, he just wanted to control the flow of information and sympathy. "It's always about power," Jenna said, her eyes full of a sad understanding. "You're not her daughter, so she's making damn sure you're on your own." Her words struck me with the force of a physical blow, confirming the terrifying suspicion that had been growing in my heart. Meredith wasn't just ignoring us. She was meticulously orchestrating my isolation. I couldn't bring myself to open the family chat again. I stopped checking for messages. I stopped waiting for a call that was never going to come. Instead, I found a different kind of family in the shared, hushed spaces of the hospital. In the small family lounge, I met Sarah, whose son was born at 25 weeks, and Maria, whose twin daughters were awaiting heart surgery. We formed a small private WhatsApp group, a sacred space where we celebrated the tiniest of victories. Sarah's son finally maintaining his own oxygen levels for an hour, Maria's girls passing a crucial pre-op test. When I posted a grainy photo of Leo announcing he'd had his first fully stable day, their replies flooded in instantly. They were genuine, kind, and real. These women, strangers bound together by the fiercest kind of fear and hope, became the family mine refused to be. Jenna remained my rock, bringing me coffee and snacks, or just sitting in companionable silence with me during the long, lonely nights. "Meredith is afraid of you," she told me one evening, her voice low and certain. "You're your father's daughter, not hers. You represent a part of his life she can't own. That's why she's doing this." Her words sank in, connecting the dots of a lifetime of slights. I thought about every family gathering where she'd spoken around me as if I wasn't there. Every company event I was never invited to. Now, with Leo's life hanging in the balance, her passive-aggressive exclusion had morphed into active, deliberate cruelty. The glittering hotel party in Aspen was only a 2-hour drive away, yet Meredith and Claire had chosen champagne and celebration over simple, human compassion. I saved the Instagram post to my phone. It was evidence, a receipt for their betrayal. I didn't know what was coming next, but one thing had become crystal clear. I was done being their ghost. I was done being invisible. 2 weeks into Leo's fight, I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria, staring at a tasteless, cold sandwich I had no appetite for. Suddenly, my phone, which had been silent for days, began to buzz. And then it buzzed again and again and again. It lit up with 38 missed calls, all from Claire. My heart hammered against my ribs. 38 calls wasn't concern. That was pure panic. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely press the screen to call her back. She answered on the very first ring. Ellie, thank God. Finally. Her voice was a ragged, breathless whisper. It's Dad. He's at Presbyterian Hospital. They're saying it's severe exhaustion. He collapsed at home this morning. I shot out of my chair so fast it screeched against the linoleum floor, earning me a few annoyed looks. What? Is he awake? Is he okay? He's stable for now, but they're running a lot of tests. Meredith is here with me. The whole family is here. Ellie, Dad keeps asking why you aren't coming. Her voice cracked on the last words. He's really hurt, Ellie. He thinks you don't want us there. The words hit me like a physical blow, a fist to the gut that stole my breath. He thinks I don't want him there. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Claire, are you serious? I have been alone in this hospital for 2 solid weeks. Not one visit from you or Dad, not one phone call. Meredith told the nurses here that I was too fragile for visitors. She's the one who's been keeping you away. A long, heavy silence stretched over the line. Then Claire's voice came back, barely a whisper. She told us the doctors had banned all visitors from your floor because of your mental state. She said you were on the verge of a complete breakdown and that the NICU staff recommended total isolation for your own good. My knees gave out, and I had to grip the edge of the table to stay upright. She said, what? She swore the hospital staff had confirmed it, Ellie. Dad believed her. He thought he was protecting you by staying away. Claire's voice trembled with a dawning horror. He used what happened after Mom died, how depressed you were. He thought he was doing the right thing. I believed her too. I closed my eyes and the clatter of the cafeteria faded into a dull roar in my ears. Every unanswered text, every silent day, every lonely night, it all snapped into a horrible, sickening focus. Meredith hadn't just ignored me. She had constructed an elaborate wall of lies, a fortress so thick that no one could get through. My own father thought he was helping me by abandoning his grandson. I'm on my way, Claire said, her voice suddenly firm. I'll be at the NICU in 20 minutes. I need to see Leo, and I need you to tell me everything. I hung up the phone and just stared at it. 38 missed calls. My little sister, the one Meredith had meticulously groomed to be her loyal second-in-command, was finally starting to ask questions. For the first time in 2 weeks, a tiny, dangerous flicker of hope ignited in the darkness. Claire arrived, still in her sharp corporate suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, her eyes red-rimmed and wide. She scrubbed in at the hand-washing station with a ferocity the nurses would have appreciated, her hands turning raw under the harsh soap. When she finally stepped up to Leo's incubator, she froze. Oh my God, she breathed, her voice catching. Ellie, he's so small. I watched as something fundamental shifted in her face. The polished mask of the corporate lawyer cracked wide open as she reached one hesitant finger through a porthole, gently touching Leo's foot, just as I did 100 times a day. She lied to all of us, Claire said, turning to me, her voice low and seething with a quiet rage. I asked Dad point blank in the hospital corridor. He showed me the texts from Meredith, screenshots of conversations with doctors, official warnings about your postpartum instability. He genuinely thought he was following medical advice. The rage that had been simmering inside me for weeks rose, hot and clean. There were no doctors, Claire. She made it all up. I know, Claire said, her eyes blazing with a fire I'd never seen in her before. I just got off the phone with the hospital's social worker. There is no record of any visitor restrictions for you. Meredith never even filled out the official family contact form. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. I'm gathering every message, every email. As a company lawyer, I have access to her work accounts. If she used company resources to orchestrate this, it's a fireable offense. It's fraud. I just stared at my sister, 29 and fierce, finally seeing the woman who raised her for the monster she truly was. "Why now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Because Dad almost died believing he was doing the right thing to protect you," she said, her own voice breaking. "And because I looked at that little boy. And I realized what I've been a part of. I let her convince me you were pushing us away." She wiped angrily at her eyes. "I am done being her puppet, Ellie." For the first time in my entire life, someone from my own blood was standing on my side of the glass. Claire started acting like the lawyer she was. She took photos of Leo, she grilled the nurses for updates, she demanded to see his charts. When Mark arrived later, looking haggard from work, he found us there together, sisters again, standing guard over our tiny warrior. That night, just before I tried to get some sleep on the lumpy cot in my room, Claire sent me a single text. "I've got everything. Tomorrow, we end this." I held the phone to my chest, the steady beeping of Leo's monitors from the nearby nursery, a comforting rhythm in the background. The wall Meredith had built around me was about to come crashing down, and my little sister was holding the sledgehammer. The next morning, Claire walked into the NICU family lounge with an expression of grim determination. She dropped her designer purse onto a chair and began scrubbing her hands at the sink, each movement sharp and precise, as if she were preparing for a legal battle. "I went through Meredith's work emails last night," she said, her voice low but vibrating with fury. "She's been lying to everyone, Ellie, not just about you, about Dad, too." I stood by Leo's incubator, my hand resting on the smooth plastic shield that separated me from my son's fragile body. "What did you find?" Claire pulled out her phone and scrolled through a thread of messages, her face tight. She told the company's board of directors that Dad was stepping back voluntarily due to his declining health, but I found the email chain between her and an acquisitions lawyer. She's been drafting documents for months to transfer Dad's majority shares entirely into her name. She was using his collapse as the final push to shove him out completely. Her eyes flashed with anger. "And as for you," she emailed Dad's cousin, telling her you were too unstable to see anyone, that you'd had a severe postpartum breakdown. My breath caught in my throat. "She's trying to declare me crazy to keep me away from the family." "Exactly," Claire said, slipping her phone back into her pocket. "She's terrified you'll challenge her absolute control over the company. You're Richard Vance's firstborn daughter, Ellie. Legally, you have a claim to his original stake in the company, even if you've never shown any interest in it. She's been systematically isolating you to make sure you stay too broken to ever fight back." I sank into one of the uncomfortable lounge chairs, my mind reeling. Meredith's lies weren't just the petty cruelty of a jealous stepmother. They were a calculated business strategy. Every ignored phone call, every passive-aggressive comment, every fabricated story was a move in her long game to completely erase me. I looked over at Leo, his tiny chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, and I felt a new kind of defiance flare in my chest. She was not going to win. "We have to confront her," Claire said, beginning to pace the small room. "I can pull more records, contracts, minutes from board meetings. If she's been using company funds and resources to spread these lies, that's wire fraud. We'll do it together, in front of Dad and in front of her most important client." I nodded, my own heart pounding with a mixture of terror and adrenaline. "When?" "Tomorrow night. She's hosting a get-well dinner for Dad in one of the hospital's private dining rooms. Her biggest investor, Mr. Harrison, is going to be there. We show up, we lay out all the evidence, and we force her to answer for everything." Claire's tone was made of steel. She's not getting away with this. The plan felt like a lifeline, but the thought of confronting Meredith face to face was terrifying. She had spent my entire life building walls around me, making me feel small and insignificant. Could we really tear them all down in one night? I glanced at Leo, His tiny fingers curled into a fist, and I knew I had to try. For him. For us. Jenna came in during her break, her nurse's badge glinting. She saw the tension etched on my face and immediately sat down beside me. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice calm but perceptive. I told her everything. Claire's discoveries, Meredith's web of emails, the lies about my mental health. Jenna listened intently, her expression growing darker with every word. "That is textbook manipulation, Ellie," she said when I finished. "My own stepmother did the same thing to me when I was a teenager. She told my dad I was a troubled kid to keep me out of family vacations and events. She didn't want to share his attention. It's about being the gatekeeper. She gets to decide who matters and who doesn't." I stared at her, the pieces clicking into place. That's exactly what Meredith is doing. She's the gatekeeper deciding who belongs in the Vance family. Jenna nodded grimly, and gatekeepers absolutely hate being challenged. You and Claire are about to hit her right where it hurts the most, her reputation. She's going to fight dirty, so you need to be prepared. She leaned in closer. When I finally confronted my stepmother, I had to rehearse what I was going to say a dozen times. You have to keep your voice steady, no matter how she tries to twist your words. Practice with Claire. Don't let Meredith derail you with emotional attacks. That afternoon, Claire and I sat in the NICU family lounge, her laptop open between us. We planned our attack. She pulled up the documents, the emails, the meeting minutes, even the draft of the contract to transfer Dad's shares. "This is our ammunition," she said. "We walk in. We show Mr. Harrison these lies, and we demand answers. Meredith's entire career is built on a foundation of trust. If we expose her as a liar, she's finished." I practiced my opening line over and over, my voice trembling at first. "Meredith, why did you tell everyone I was unstable?" I said to the empty room, imagining her cold, dismissive stare. "Why did you lie about Dad's health to steal control of his company?" Claire coached me, her lawyerly precision cutting through my anxiety. "Don't ask questions she can deflect. Make statements. You told Dad's cousin I was unstable. You drafted documents to steal his shares. Stick to the facts. Don't let her see your fear." Mark slipped into the lounge, his eyes heavy from another 12-hour shift. "What's this war council about?" he asked. I explained the plan, and a slow smile spread across his face. He squeezed my hand. "You've got this," he said, his voice full of confidence. "She has underestimated both of you for your entire lives." Jenna's words echoed in my head as we worked. Meredith is the gatekeeper. But I wasn't at the gate alone anymore. My sister's determination was a fire that fueled my own. For years, Meredith had treated me like an outsider, but now I had her own daughter standing right beside me. Through it all, Leo's steady, rhythmic beeps from the nursery next door anchored me, a constant reminder of exactly what and who I was fighting for. By evening, the plan was set. Claire would present the evidence of business fraud. I would confront Meredith about the personal lies. We would do it in front of Dad and her prize investor, forcing her into a corner where her charisma and manipulation couldn't save her. I looked at my son, his tiny body a testament to the will to survive, and felt a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Meredith Vance's reign was about to end. That evening, I stood outside the hospital's private dining room, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my hands were steady. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and floor polish, a stark contrast to the sterile hope of the NICU. Claire stood beside me, her laptop clutched like a shield. Inside, our father, Richard, sat in a wheelchair, looking pale but alert. Across from him sat Meredith, her posture perfectly rigid, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break over her head. And next to her, sipping a glass of water, was Mr. Harrison, her key investor, who believed he was there to wish his business partner a speedy recovery. This was it. I took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. I walked directly to the table. "Meredith," I said, my voice holding firm. Why did you tell our entire family that I was too unstable to see anyone? Why did you lie about a hospital ban to keep them away from me and my son? Her eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second before she composed her features into a mask of gentle concern. Eleanor, darling, you're upset. I was only protecting you. The doctors themselves said you needed space after such a traumatic birth. That's not true, I said, my voice sharp and clear. I spoke with the NICU staff. There was no ban. There were no doctor's orders. You told Dad and Claire I was having a breakdown, but you never once contacted the hospital social worker or any official personnel. Claire stepped forward, placing her laptop on the table with a soft click. She's right, she said, her voice cutting through the tense air. I verified it myself. But I also found your emails, Meredith. She turned the laptop screen toward the group, displaying a series of damning messages. You told Dad's cousins that Ellie was too fragile for visitors, and you informed the company board that Dad was stepping down voluntarily while you were secretly drafting documents to have his majority shares transferred into your name. My dad's head jerked up, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. What? My shares? Meredith, you told me it was a temporary measure. You told me I'd remain on the board. Mr. Harrison leaned forward, his friendly demeanor vanishing. His expression was now dark and serious. You told me Richard had approved the full transition of leadership, Meredith. My firm has invested millions of dollars based on your word. If what they're saying is true, this is fraud. Meredith's jaw tightened, but she waved a dismissive hand, attempting to regain control. This is all a ridiculous misunderstanding. I was protecting the company's reputation. Eleanor has always been emotional. We all know that. And Richard's health was clearly declining. I had to make difficult decisions for the good of the business. Enough, I said, my voice slicing through her web of excuses. You didn't just lie about me, you abandoned your grandson. You knew Leo was in the NICU, fighting for every breath he took. And you chose to go to parties and spread rumors instead of showing up for your family. You've spent my entire life pushing me out because I'm Dad's daughter from his first marriage, not yours. You are terrified that I might one day challenge your absolute control. Claire's eyes were blazing. And there's more, Mr. Harrison. Meredith used company funds to hire a personal PR firm for family image management. She paid them to scrub mentions of Ellie and Leo from public-facing articles to make the Vance family look perfect while she was actively pushing Dad aside. Mr. Harrison stood up abruptly, his face a thundercloud. His voice was ice. This isn't a family dispute. This is a fundamental matter of integrity. My firm backed your projects because we trusted you, Meredith. If you've lied about your own family, what else have you hidden from your investors? The color drained from Meredith's face. Her mask of composure finally cracked. You're twisting everything, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. I built this company from nothing. I gave everything to this family, unlike Eleanor, who's never shown the slightest bit of interest in it. My dad's voice, though weak, cut through her tirade with quiet, devastating finality. You kept me from my daughter and my grandson. You let me believe my own child didn't want me there. I trusted you, Meredith. His eyes, filled with a terrible regret, turned to me. I'm so sorry, Ellie. I should have been there. I should have come sooner. The room fell into a heavy silence, his apology hanging in the air. I felt tears welling in my eyes and blinked them back. You didn't know, Dad. She made sure of that. Claire moved to my side, placing a steady hand on my arm. We are done letting her control this family. I've already forwarded the entire email chain to the board. They're calling an emergency meeting first thing tomorrow. Meredith, your time is up. Meredith's eyes darted between us, raw panic finally creeping into her expression. You think you can destroy me? I have held this family together for 20 years. Without me, all of this falls apart. No, I said, my voice unflinching and strong. You don't get to play the savior anymore. You have manipulated and bullied everyone around you to hold on to your power, but it ends right now. Leo and I don't need you. You are not my family." Mr. Harrison shook his head in disgust and pulled out his phone. "I'm contacting my legal team. We will be reviewing every single contract we have with your firm. This level of deceit is unacceptable." Meredith's face was ashen. "You're making a terrible mistake," she muttered, but her voice had lost all its force. She snatched her purse from the table and stormed out of the room, her furious heel clicks echoing down the empty hospital corridor. My dad reached for my hand, his grip weak but warm and real. "I failed you, Ellie. I let her blind me. I want to be a part of your life now. And Leo's." I squeezed his hand, a knot in my throat loosening. "You're here now, Dad. That's all that matters." Claire wrapped me in a trembling hug, her usual steely composure gone. "We'll fix this," she whispered into my hair. "Together." As they left to go see Leo for the first time, I stayed behind in the quiet dining room. A profound wave of exhaustion washed over me, but underneath it was a deep, quiet sense of peace. Meredith's empire of lies had finally crumbled, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt truly, completely free. A month after the confrontation, Leo was finally home. He was still tiny, but he was a fighter. At just over 5 pounds, he fit perfectly in the crook of my arm, his soft, even breaths a constant miracle after 6 long weeks in the NICU. The first thing I had done was block Meredith's number and delete her from every corner of my life, exorcising her like a bad memory. Claire told me the fallout at the company had been catastrophic. Mr. Harrison, the investor, had pulled all his funding the day after the board meeting, citing an irreparable breach of trust. With the company's finances in a freefall and her reputation in tatters, Meredith had been forced to sell her controlling stake for a fraction of its worth. The empire she had clung to so fiercely was gone, and I felt nothing but a quiet sense of justice. My focus had shifted entirely to building my own family, the one that truly mattered. Claire came over every weekend, swapping her power suits for jeans as she sat on the floor, making faces at Leo on his playmat. My dad, still recovering but getting stronger every day, came too. The joy that lit up his eyes whenever he held his grandson was a sight I thought I'd never see. Their presence filled the quiet, empty spaces that Meredith's toxicity had occupied for so long. My husband, Mark, finally free from the crushing pressure of endless overtime, spent his hours happily assembling Leo's crib and baby-proofing the house, his steady, capable hands a comfort I leaned on daily. The group chat I had with Sarah and Maria, my NICU friends, was a constant buzz of activity. We sent each other photos of our babies, shared feeding tips at 3 a.m., and sent messages of encouragement on tough days. Jenna, my nurse friend, would often stop by after her shifts, bringing coffee and stories from the hospital that made me laugh until I cried. These were the people who showed up. They were the ones who chose us, and I held them closer than gold. For Leo's first birthday, I planned a small, simple celebration at our home in Denver. There were no grand decorations, just a handful of colorful balloons and a tiny, slightly lopsided cake I had baked myself. Mark set up the dining table, a soft smile on his face as he adjusted the borrowed high chair. Claire arrived first, carrying a giant, fluffy teddy bear that was almost as big as Leo. "For my favorite nephew," she said, kissing the top of his head. My dad followed, moving a little slower now, but smiling wider than I had seen him smile in 20 years. Jenna came straight from the hospital, still in her scrubs, with a gift bag full of colorful board books. Sarah and Maria brought their own toddlers, and soon the house was filled with the chaotic, joyful sound of their laughter. We all gathered around the little cake, Leo's eyes wide with wonder as I lit a single candle. Mark's arm rested on my shoulder, steady and warm. Claire snapped photos, her face glowing with a pride that was all her own. Dad raised a glass of sparkling cider, his voice thick with emotion. "To Leo," he said, "the strongest fighter I have ever known." We all cheered, and I helped my son blow out his candle. He clapped his tiny hands, completely unaware of the long, hard road we had traveled to get to this moment. Later, as we were cleaning up, Claire pulled me aside. "The company's sale was finalized last week," she said quietly. "Meredith moved to Raleigh. She tried calling Dad a few times, but he won't pick up." I just nodded, feeling a final weight lift from my shoulders. Meredith was truly gone, a ghost from a past life, buried under the wreckage of the world she herself had destroyed. That evening, I sat on the back porch with Jenna, rocking a sleeping Leo in my arms. "You did it, Ellie," she said softly, looking at the warm glow of the living room behind us. "You built a real family, not one she could ever control." I looked at the people I loved. Mark, Claire, my dad, my friends. They weren't bound together by blood or business, but by something far stronger, by choice, by the simple, profound act of showing up when it mattered most. Meredith had tried to teach me that family was an empire, something to be conquered and controlled. She was wrong. Family is the people who stand with you in the storm, who see your worth even when you can't, who fight for you just as fiercely as you fight for them. I had to learn that lesson the hard way, but it's a truth I will carry with me and teach to my son for the rest of my life.